like Mylie Cyrus, Rihanna and Lady Gaga have millions of fans, of course. Now there are fears their young fan base are being influenced by their often raunchy videos.
A survey by NetMums has found that children as young as 5 are trying to copy the moves they see on screen. Almost 80% of parents say the videos are too sexual and inappropriate for youngsters. We asked some of you whether you thought some performances were too explicit.
Some a bit too raunchy, some a little bit too over the top, but the majority of them seem okay.
Top 40 hits, like the music videos in them are a bit inappropriate. Stuff like Britney Spears, Lady Gaga, Mylie Cyrus, it's those kind of artists usually that are coming up with these kind of inappropriate videos.
You have to be a bit careful of what they watch, and if I'm in the room, you know, and I'm listening to it, I will turn it over and not let them. But yeah, generally it's very much looser these days than it ever was.
Maybe that's how they express themselves, you know, through explicit language, but you know, there are definitely some cases where it isn't really needed, and there are, you know, better ways to write a song than just using, you know, swear words.
Far too raunchy from what I've seen recently. Don't really listen to pop music often, but just from the internet and stuff going viral, like Mylie Cyrus's recent video and Rihanna's, I know that I wouldn't let my kids watch that sort of thing.
Let's speak now to Tina Miller, who's a sociologist who has 3 children. Rupert Till, a senior lecturer in music technology at the University of Huddersfield, and your dad of a 2-year-old. OK, so you're both in the mix at very different ends because your children are much older than...
Yes, they are. They're in their 20s.
In their 20s.
Yeah.
But, you know, as a mother, have you had those moments in the past or even now when you look at things?
I mean, in the past, but I just think that the whole landscape has changed so dramatically in terms of what's available and what's accessible in terms of the internet. And children of very young ages, as your report showed, being able to access all sorts of materials that at one time we'd have thought of as potentially X-rated or certainly adult material.
Are you talking there about some of the... I mean, the artists we were talking about, Mylie Cyrus, for example, are you talking about that kind of material? You think that has gone beyond some kind of a line?
I think, well, we're saturated now with images that at one time children would not have had easy access to. And children now are often looking at things on the internet in their rooms. We know that lots of children are looking at porn, etc., perhaps by mistake, you know, coming into finding those sorts of sites online. So I think it's more... I'm sure that there's always been the case of women wanting to look attractive in various musical forms, and that's, you know, beauty and attraction is a lovely thing. And society would be very grey and dull without it. But I think that what has changed is the context and the modes through which we can access those types of material.
Rupert, you look at this as part of your job, don't you? Has the landscape changed, do you think, dramatically?
I think the music hasn't changed at all. Madonna was probably more explicit and worse, if you want to put it that way. Britney Spears, very similar. But the difference was you couldn't pick up Madonna on a tablet computer in your sitting room and within seconds be looking at the video. You'd have to wait till late night MTV or something. So it is the access to it. I think pop music has always had these issues, really, back to Elvis, really.
And how do you approach it? Because it's one thing talking about it academically, and that's your job. The other is a father. And what do you plan on doing?
I think you have to manage the access that your children have to things, to try and watch YouTube or whatever it is with your children, to take responsibility. I think the reason these things exist is because adults want this material. That's why Mylie Cyrus is doing this, is because adults want to see her doing it.
It is an interesting point, isn't it, I suppose, in an artist's career where, you know, she was very much, you know, had a very, very young fan base. She's grown up. Some of her fans obviously will have grown up with her, others won't. So then it becomes a sort of juxtaposition, doesn't there?
And at some point she has to move her career from being a child star doing Disney stuff, and she's 20, she's got to start being an adult and making music that appeals to adults if she wants her career to move on. I mean, One Direction one day will have the same issue. Take That had to make a jump to adult fans at some point, but for women they seem to often do it through making their videos more raunchy.
Tina, this one came in from Amanda, a comment from Amanda who's got in touch saying, as a mother of older teenage boys, I can tell you, you can't prevent access to this. You can only hope that by providing moral grounding and discussing the importance of respecting women will pay off. quite a lot of people are sort of echoing that theme, which is it's out there, and it's not necessarily wrong that it's out there. It's a question of how your relationship with your children as to whether it's damaging.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really important point. It is out there, but it's particularly about younger children being able to access that I think is a real concern. But I think that although we see, I mean, what we see in that video in Mylie Cyrus is, you know, a very particular form of femininity. I mean, what is that selling? It's selling sort of femininity as object, as being sexually attractive, which then sets up all sorts of other problems and pressures in young girls in particular, but which is matched by ideas of masculinity. So it's about hyper-aggressive masculinity, about controlling women as, you know, there's so much more to it than just a sort of innocuous decision by Mylie Cyrus to sell some more some more material. So I think we have to think about the whole context. I think there are some things we can do, and one of the things is about controlling access.
Interesting, because I bought some CDs the other day, and I didn't realise, and maybe that there are actually parental advisories on CDs now. So, for example, if the lyrics are explicit, it is labelled, isn't it?
It is, but it's still so easy to get hold of CDs and think. You know, I mean, parents can try to monitor that, and I think it's important that parents try to have a discussion, which can be difficult, but to try to sort of monitor and manage the materials that their younger children might be accessing, because once seen, it's difficult to unsee it.
Do you know, sometimes it occurs to me, and maybe we're a bit guilty of it here, that we're all sitting here, I speak for myself, middle-aged, talking about how you control young people doing something. I mean, there's a danger of us all looking, A, terribly po-faced, and B, just completely out of touch. Do you know what I'm saying? Because what we say here in a funny kind of way doesn't make any difference, does it?
Yeah, because popular music reflects society. I mean, it's almost prophetic. What happens in our society appears in our pop music before it appears elsewhere. So, I mean, if this is happening in Mylie Cyrus's music, it's because it's happening more widely in society. So it's partly about what happens more widely in the media and in television.
Isn't that incredibly sad that women have made so many advances in terms of education, employment? You know, there are lots of attributes about being female currently that are fantastic, and yet we keep reducing it, or it becomes reduced down to, you know, objectification, and being, you know, the attribute of being sexually attractive is the one that's valued. I mean, I think that's very sad.
OK, we'll leave it there. Lots of people are getting in touch this morning, so thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Leanne has gone on touch in Facebook saying some of the music videos, she says, are like soft pornography. My 2-year-old loves music, won't put the music channels on when she's around, only puts the radio on for that reason.
Very interesting. We'll have the sport in a couple of moments.